Jon Moxley, let's unpack why. So, let's just say the year for Jon Moxley, the wrestling year 2025, did not start out so great, right? For him and the Death Riders. In terms of output and in terms of acclaim and in terms of like just viewer apathy in general, the Death Riders saga had a bit of a stranglehold on AEW. It wasn't well received whatsoever, and the week-to-week angles and the messaging of it's us trying to rebuild the company's soul was not connecting at the level that AEW would have liked. I think this hit a nadir in the program with Cope, with Adam Copeland, to where the duo ended up wrestling one of the most miserable and bleak world title matches I've seen in AEW so far. The program didn't connect on any kind of level, and it didn't help, of course, that over here Cope was saying that we want to have this gritty NWA-style world title feud, and then they proceeded to wrestle a match that was more like a mid-2000s WWE main event. The narrative wasn't right, the work quality wasn't there, nobody seemed fully locked in, and it did not deliver. So for the first quarter of 2025, it seemed like Jon Moxley was on the verge of maybe having one of the worst years of his career, certainly since he left WWE and left Mitch the plotted plant behind. However, from there, things took a pretty dramatic upturn. It really began with Hangman Page emerging as the guy who was going to dethrone Moxley as AEW World Champion. The guy who was going to finally open that briefcase, show the world the belt they hadn't seen in many, many months, and send this evil dude and his gang of jackasses packing. This, of course, happened at All in Texas, and it was one of the most cathartic match results in recent AEW history. The image of Moxley hanging over the top rope with that belt around his neck as he tapped out and bugly-eyed stared his way to the submission will live long in the memory of everybody who watched it. But there's also other elements to this as well, because not only did he put Hangman Page over at All In, guess what? He did it on Dynamite just a couple of weeks later. He doubled down on putting the guy over, as every good heel should. So Moxley spent all this time building this indomitable aura until AEW found the perfect guy to resemble the heart and soul of the promotion, which feeds back into that overlying Death Riders narrative and resulted in one of the most satisfying wrestling conclusions of the year. We're not going to talk about how the Hangman Adam Page world title run went from there. That's not the point of today's video. The point is to talk about Jon Moxley. And there are two other case studies to look at when making his case for the MVP of AEW in 2025. Number one is Darby Allin, who at once was presented as one of the main oppositions of the Death Riders. He had to go away and climb Mount Everest, but when he came back, it was full speed ahead on elevating him with Jon Moxley as well. When he was defeated in that coffin match, it was not because Moxley was better than Darby Allin, it was because Pac returned and blindsided him. This was Jon Moxley using the one last trick he had left in his book. This was the heel resorting to cowardice. All he had left to do was pull Pac out and have him return and have him shock Darby Allin. After that, he was out of tricks, because from then we got to the I Quit match where he verbally said I quit and put Darby Allin over in one of the strongest ways you can possibly do in AEW. To have a wrestler emasculated to the point of giving up is an affront to their character. It is an affront to their pride and their defiance and their strength and everything else. So when you have the big bad demon heel of the company doing that, it means so much more. And it really worked as a moment to put a bow on the Darby Allin saga in general. But from Darby Allin, we go to Kyle O'Reilly as well. Who would have seen this elevation coming? Not me. Kyle's had one of the most stop-start AEW runs out there, primarily through injuries and other issues. But also he's never been the most strongest pushed guy in the company from the day he came in. However, through the Jon Moxley saga, he was undoubtedly raised up. The story of their singles matches was simple. Kyle was pushing Mox closer and closer. Mox was realizing that he couldn't beat this guy fair. So he took shortcuts. He took the interferences and the referee distractions and everything else, because that's all he had left. This guy was running out of options. And when he had no other options, when they got inside the blooming blood and guts cage, he had no choice but to relent to Kyle O'Reilly and put him over in one of the biggest AEW matches that it does every single year. So you've got Hangman Page who's been elevated. You've got Kyle O'Reilly. You've got Darby Allin. Who else have we got? Who else could we look at? Well, how about one of his stablemates? How about Marina Shafir? Are we going to argue that Marina Shafir hasn't been elevated by the Death Rider saga? Because if you're going to argue that, we're on different planets, my friend. Look, she's had a really, really good year. I'd argue that she's one of the most improved wrestlers in the sport. And she's barely wrestled for AEW, right? But the way she carries herself on TV is different. It's different now. There's a real edge to her. There's a real aura about Marina Shafir. She has a look in her eyes that tells you, I'm going to kill you as soon as I decide to do that. And there's nothing you will be able to do to stop it. And that edge has emerged through her working closely with Moxley, through the interest he has taken in her career behind the scenes, for the way he has presented her and in the Death Rider saga, to where she has found her own voice, she has found her own character, she's found her presence, she knows how she needs to carry herself. And yeah, look, you're not seeing flippin' epic 25-minute Marina Shafir pay-per-view matches on these shows, but that's not her role in the company. Her role in the company is not to be Chris Statlander. It's to be the best possible version of herself she can be, and she's well on her way to doing that through working with Moxley and the rest of the Death Riders. Claudio Castagnoli, he's gonna usurp Jon Moxley as the leader of the Death Riders as a result of their ongoing storyline. He just beat him in the C2 as I'm recording this. In fact, by the time you're watching this, there's every chance that Claudio has already kicked him out. But that seems like the likely direction here. And Claudio, throughout the years, just come across as the most evil, cold-blooded bugger in the whole stable. I mean, this guy, not a single positive thought goes through his head as he's standing there scowling in the background of these segments and everything else. You're gonna tell me that Claudio hasn't been elevated by this whole thing? That when he usurps Moxley, that when he kicks him out of the stable, he's not gonna feel like he's been elevated and lifted up by his involvement in this man throughout 2025. Currently, as I'm recording this, Moxley reeks of desperation. He's laughing off defeats. He's saying, that wasn't the real quiz. The real quiz starts now. He's been training. He's been pushing these guys backstage. He's been getting back after it because he knows, his character knows at least, I should say, that he's a wounded animal. He knows he's spent. He knows he's done. He's a predator who's injured and has been backed into a corner and is trying to cling on to his status, to his position as the apex predator, and he's starting to fail. The cracks are showing. I elaborated on this in an editorial style video published earlier this year, but Moxley's character work since he escaped the Cope vortex has been absolutely masterful, and some of the most compelling stuff he has put forward in his entire career. He is showing vulnerability after years of presenting himself as the toughest guy in the company. That is an extremely powerful detour, and the selflessness with which this guy has started putting other people over who are not as over as him cannot be understated. I made this point in the Becky Lynch video that we put out a couple of days ago, where I said that I don't think the MVP of a wrestling company is necessarily the person for that year who's had the most 4-star matches or whatever. I don't necessarily think it's the body of the ceiling of the catalog that should be the only thing we consider. I think that the driving factor for me is the person who's doing most to raise everything they touch and lift other people up and elevate the product as a whole. And I really think that's Jon Moxley. Obviously, he's one of the biggest names in AEW, so that gives him the power to do so. And the selflessness with which he continues to focus on people like Marina Shafir and like Kyle O'Reilly, who maybe weren't as over before. I think it's a real credit to him. I do. I think it makes him one of the most valuable people in AEW right now. And I think after the stuff at the start of the year, this has been one of the most successful periods of his entire pro wrestling career. Comes at a time when AEW needs it to. It needs new stars. It needs people who will lift the younger generations up. And I can only hope that it continues for Moxley in 2026. I'd love to see him and Marina stay together somehow, if there's a way they can split them off from the Death Riders in this whole thing. I think they have great on-screen chemistry, and it'd be a shame if they were no longer working together on camera. But if they don't, it's not the end of the world. It doesn't stop them sharing knowledge backstage and stuff like that. Either way, Jon Moxley is my MVP for AEW in 2025. As we head in to 2026, who's yours? Let me know in the comment section below. Argue away. That's what this is all about. It's all opinion-based, my very good friends. We don't need to hate each other because we like different wrestling. It's all good. And check out the WWE version of this video that's on your screen right now as well. We'll be back with more soon. Goodbye.